My name is Jon Valender and I run Destination Opera. It's been a slow burn, really. I've always produced events, and I started off producing recitals for myself to sing. I've always loved recital work rather than just, I think there's more to being an opera singer than just singing operas. There's oratorios and there's recitals. Recitals work is where I started. It's just singing songs in front of a piano, and it's a much more intimate chamber event. And it's just started me thinking about how I appeal to an audience and how I want to work with an audience, really. And that has grown into now developing audiences, and that started Destination Opera, really. Yeah, I think education is lots of different things, really. There's working with children in school situations, but often that doesn't do as much as when you actually take children out of this classroom and out of the schools into a different environment. But there's also appealing to adults and showing a new way of listening to opera, understanding opera, and demystifying what it is. And so that has, when I moved back from Germany a few years ago, I realized that I wanted that to be my focus, really, not just singing operas, but working with people and showing why I love the art form. I think opera's seen very differently in Germany, whereas here we have 6 opera companies that are full-time and large-scale. They have over 138, I think it is. And so a town the size of Sherborne or Dorchester or Wareham, they would each have an opera house in Germany. And so it's seen very differently. It's much more an everyday thing. It's not seen as an elite thing that we have. I really struggle with the preconceptions of my art form, really, here. And so coming back here, I thought, what little things can I do to shift that conversation, really, about opera? There's a really vibrant art scene here in Dorset. What I see a lot of is visual arts, and less performing arts, especially music and classical music. There's a lot more rock and pop and various forms of contemporary music, but less classical music. So that's, again, something I wanted to address. But just to be involved in a scene and bring my art form into this setting. I think that in the private school system, there's so much access to music education, and there's very much in comprehensive schools. It varies from school to school. We have an amazing national curriculum, but we don't have a national extracurriculum, and so whereas every school teacher might teach GCSE music, it might not have a choir, it might not have an orchestra, and so it's having access to performance opportunities as much as anything that I think is really vital. Last year we did a massive project. We put on I Domeneo, a full-scale opera, and I found it really lovely. A month afterwards, I was walking around a playground, and I heard somebody singing the tunes, and I was like, extraordinary that months later this work is still in their head. They were even singing in fluent Italian. It was gorgeous. I find it really interesting to take opera out of the opera house. I think people have a preconception of what an opera house is, and whether it's the way that people should behave or the way they should dress. Whereas if you put it in an unusual situation, then it might be somewhere that they feel more at home, or it may be somewhere that they wanted to go. And so suddenly you have a different expectation. Also, if I can tailor it to the setting, if I can set an opera that's about being in a prison, then it's a very different experience than if you set it in an opera house in a prison. The idea came about because I often get asked to sing in concerts to sing the main tunes from operas and to sing the big hits. And that's great. Sometimes that's what people want. But for me, that's not really what opera is about. It's about telling a story. It's about conveying an emotion. And so what we decided to do was to take 2 opera singers and a pianist, take them to an unusual place, and we carry through 3 operas in one evening. So we take one main opera and we'll do 3 scenes, 3 big scenes. And so rather than just going, this is a pretty tune that was on the British Airways advert, we'll go, this is why they're singing this. This is why they're singing it now. And then suddenly you'll find out what happens to them later. Maybe they usually get sick because it's opera, and they'll fall in love or whatever is going to happen. But it's never about just singing one thing at one time. So in these performances, we get to do the whole of 3 operas and get to hear 3 stories, and it's really lovely to tell the stories. But for people to start to understand the emotions and the passions of why they're singing when they're singing. Developing from Opera Anywhere, I suddenly was aware of what the audience reaction to these stories were, and wanting to be able to do this in a bit more in depth, and to realise that many times the audience haven't been to an opera before. They don't. They might be intimidated by the setting. So we came up with Ed Viney, who's an amazing scriptwriter and theatre deviser. We developed the conceit of having a judge who talks the audience through the performance. And so we were also working on Verdi's Otello, which is a retelling of Shakespeare's Othello. So we've got theatre and opera sort of combined into one thing. And the judge was a conceit that showed the audience what was going on, and helped to unpick the story. It's an interesting story in that Otello at the end, no spoilers, but he kills his wife. But at the beginning, he's completely besotted with her. He adores her, and it's Iago who poisons him with words, and tells him how awful Desdemona is being. And so in the courtroom opera, we got to decide: is Otello guilty or is Iago guilty? And then so the audience gets to be part of this decision: who killed Desdemona? Wow, it was amazing. It was by far the biggest project I had ever done. It was amazing. We had it sold out. We had over 600 people turn up, and to bring something of that scale, we had to go all the way through the process of funding, and so I had to, and then finding out what schools were available, would be interested. This was the first time that we'd done this, so inevitably a lot of schools saying, what are you doing? I don't understand. I don't have time. And so now, having done that, it can lead to other bigger and better things. But it was so exciting the first time I got to hear the full chorus, because it was schools from across the county who were involved. And it wasn't until on the day that everybody got together and made that sound, which in somewhere like Sherborne Abbey was just an extraordinary sound. Which it's still on my website. I can't take it off. It's every time I go to it, it's like, yeah, that was a good day.
Amazing.
The first thing we gave them a very simple pronunciation guide. We gave them a word-for-word translation, and I went in whenever possible to the schools and talked them through. I think it's really interesting with an opera like that. It's about Greek gods and kings of Crete and warriors and things, but actually when you boil it down, it's about a father and his son. And so taking it into a school is really interesting. It's about youth, and so to talk through with the kids and go, actually, this massive thing, which is by Mozart and this sort of name that you've probably heard of, and sort of you think you have to revere, but if you boil it down and go, this is nuggets of a story, and this is why this person is saying this. So it can be as simple as, I'm just going to help you say these words in a different language, but it can be so much more impactful if you're saying, this is why you're saying this, and use the emotion that Mozart gives you. So much feedback. It's just, it's been overwhelming, really. One of my favourite was a parent emailed me a good 6 months after the initial project, and she just said, I just walked past my kid's bedroom, and he was supposed to be going to sleep, and he was singing choruses in Italian in his bedroom, and it was just a lovely thing for her as a mother, but an amazing thing for me as a producer. There's always plans. I would love to do another big scale opera for children in a couple of years. This summer I did a Voices Unbound project, which was starting a community chorus. That was on Portland in the High Angle Battery, and it was glorious to get adults singing and making noise together and telling stories, and so I want to develop that. We had 40 people from across Weymouth and Portland, and so I would love to next year get some more from across the county going, and then maybe get everybody together. High Angle Battery is such a special place to me, and it's amazing. It's such a dramatic place that I think opera is really good. I also really love shoving two things which really shouldn't belong together and see what happens. And so you have this incredibly refined opera in a concrete jungle. It becomes really exciting. So maybe we can get like 200 people from across the county and all together, and it'd be really fun. I think coming back from Germany, I was really aware of the preconceptions, and I really want to change the conversation that we're having about opera. I think that any time opera is mentioned in the press, the first thing it says is, the elitist world of opera. And it is right. It is an expensive art form. If you think about the National Theatre in London, it's opposite on the opposite side of the river from the Royal Ballet and Opera, and they have all of the same. It takes all of the same amount of people to be in the opera, but they have to have a full orchestra and a full chorus, which is sometimes 200 people that has to get paid. So it's an expensive art form. But that is opera at the very top end. That's like saying that the football is really expensive because you've just been to Old Trafford. It is really expensive. But there are, there's a five-a-side team around the corner which is doing really, which is a different experience, but it's the same game. So that's what I'm trying to say with the station opera.
Seems to be making it more accessible.
Absolutely. And I think that by participating in something, I sort of also often talk about engagement through participation. It sounds like very businessy, industry sort of phrase, but I think that getting people engaged in opera, often by being in it, then they, even if that's just by being part of the jury of the Courtroom opera, you're involved in the scene. I very much see them as the same thing. I think that by my nature, I think I want to be inclusive, and I want people to join in. So it might be that I always try and use my friends who come down from London or wherever, even more locally, to be involved. And so you've initially got this core group of people who are amazingly talented. And then it's kind of like putting opera in concrete, puts these trained voices next to amateur voices, and suddenly you get this really exciting thing that begins a conversation as well. For different projects, different things, when it comes to choosing an opera to do with schools, we have what I believe to be a unique mentoring system by which a student sits next to a professional, and so the whole opera was accompanied by students. So it has to be playable by young players. So there's no point in me saying I'm going to do this massive Wagner opera, because it's just not going to be played by a 16-year-old. Whereas something like Mozart is his key signature structures, all things like that. You have to think about that when you're choosing an opera. In Idomeneo, we have this the chorus is very important to the telling of the story. So that's why I chose Idomeneo for that project. But when I'm thinking about doing some of the chorus projects or projects for adults, I don't have to think about the orchestra in quite the same way. So it might be that it's going along with the setting. So again, going back to the High Anglometry, I really want to do Fidelio in there, which is an opera about prisoners in prison. I think it'd be hugely impactful to have people coming out of these tunnels as the prisoners as they are released at the end of Act 1. So that's one of the big long-term projects. So very much the opera is chosen by the setting. I'll be inspired by somewhere. I was really lucky with my training. I went to the Royal Northern College of Music in Manchester, and right from the very beginning, they got us to try every role of being on the stage. So we had to be a lighting designer, we had to work backstage, we had to work in costume, and so you got to see every facet of what it is to put on a production. And I think, I dare say, for some people that wouldn't have been interesting, but for me, I got to understand what it is to be a producer as well as just a singer. And so it really got me thinking about what it is to put on an opera. And then some of the jobs I've done, I've been lucky enough to travel around the world. And one of the early jobs I did, we turned up at we did Così fan tutte, and it was in all sorts of hotels across the world, and we turned up and we sent them a props list of what we needed for the production. And so say Act 1 happened at a British picnic, and so we got to see what in Dubai and in Japan they thought a British picnic would look like, and so we were immediately working with people around the world, working collaboratively, and I think that's led me into what I do now, and realizing that it's very easy for opera to become a bubble, but it's really exciting when we work with theatre directors, or this community choir project I've been doing was with B-Side, who are predominantly a visual arts organisation, and how we can feed off each other. It's suddenly becomes a really immersive, really exciting world to be in. It's been massive learning curves. I've had to, one of the big ones has been learning to get funding, and these projects can be very expensive. The aim always is to make it affordable, preferably free, to be involved with, in which case it needs to be funded. And so there's an amazing network here called the Arts Development Company, based in Dorchester, and they are fantastic at supporting people like me, giving me tools. Sometimes it's just somebody to read a bid that I'm wanting to put in and saying, you've forgotten this, you should be going from this angle, just reframe it a little bit. But also, I've had to do all my advertising and all those things. And it's reaching out to people as much as anything, finding people who know better than I do, which is most people. I think it's working out what you're passionate about, why you love your art, and what part of your art form it is that you love. So for me, it wasn't about just singing tunes. It was about telling a story. So I've come at it from a completely different angle than a lot of people would. If you just like singing the tunes, then go down that route and put on just it's very easy to put on a concert. Just hire a village hall and a pianist, and you can do something. Now you can bust, you can put things on social media, but it's working out the thing that in the art form that appeals to you and how you can use that. Really, there's several. That first time I heard the chorus singing together, it's just it was mind-blowing, really. There's been a few times sort of in the journey getting towards Destination Opera where during the pandemic I set up a festival that was producing events to get artists working again, and that was the first time that I had organised events that wasn't me singing, and I found that incredibly emotional, actually, just sort of putting on things for other people rather than inevitably the first stages in my journey were to get me working and to do the work that I wanted to do. And then I think it was quite a big learning curve for me, realizing that actually it's the enabling of others that was big. Simple things, I had in the first project I did, I had somebody come up to me, a pianist who had done all the rehearsals for a job, and she said, "Do you mind if you don't pay me?" And she was like, "I really get what you're doing." She was a busy teacher. She was like, I don't really need this, so I would love her. So she ripped up her check, and that was a very touching moment in my journey as well. Contact me directly. My email is on my website, destinationopera.co.uk, or DM me through Instagram. I would love to hear from anybody who's maybe got a venue I can use, maybe wants to sing in one of the choruses in whatever part of Dorset you are. Maybe you're in a part that I haven't thought about, and so I can start a choir in your area. Or maybe we can come and put on one of our Opera Anywhere events near you. We just need a small audience, and so sometimes it can just start with one person going, "Have you thought about this part?" or whatever. It all comes back to changing the conversation about opera. It's very possible that you hate opera, and that's fine. But I think that we have a preconception, and so people think, "Okay, it's not for me, so I won't go." Whereas actually, maybe you will enjoy it, and so come along, hear the stories, feel the emotion, and there's something incredibly powerful about the everything that we do is acoustic. We are never recorded, we're never amplified, and so there's something very different that comes from me singing directly to you, or you can be 6 feet away, rather than being in an opera house where you're half a mile away, and so maybe that will spark you going to an opera house, or maybe you'll just come to more of our events, and both of those things are great.